My family skipped my grand opening, broke into my systems, demanded 20% of my revenue, so I faced them with legal proof and shut them down for good. I was 31 years old the night I sat alone in my shiny new office, brushing confetti from a floor that no one had trod on. The apartment still smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. I had spent months meticulously planning every aspect, from the glass-paneled conference room to the espresso machine in the kitchen. This was meant to be the most important night of my life, the grand opening of my company, which I had been working toward for nearly 12 years. Nevertheless, the chairs sat empty. The food I had catered remained untouched, with the exception of one lonely plate that I ate only to avoid wasting it. My name is Adrian Keller, and I've been the responsible one in my family since I can remember. The one who preserved the peace, showed up to every birthday, and lent money, even if it meant eating noodles for a month. Marcus Keller, my younger brother, has always been the golden kid. Whatever he did, no matter how dangerous, was interpreted as ambitious, charming, or simply Marcus being Marcus. When he went out of college after 3 semesters to find himself, my parents proudly declared him an entrepreneur. When he worked 4 jobs in a year, people suggested he hadn't found his passion yet. Meanwhile, I discreetly finished school, worked double shifts at a warehouse, and lived in a studio apartment with barely enough space for a bed and a desk. Every dollar I saved went towards this ambition. Starting my own business, not a side hustle or a passion project, but a legitimate legal registered firm with staff and office space that would last. So, when I finally signed the lease and opened the doors, I expected my family to be proud. I sent out digital invites weeks in advance and even printed a few physical ones for my parents because I knew they'd swear they didn't receive the email. I planned champagne, music, and a little statement to thank everyone who supported me. At 7 p.m., I stood by the entrance in my only nice suit, waiting for the first familiar figure to enter. At 7:15, I persuaded myself they were simply running late. At 8 o'clock, I updated my phone. No calls, texts, or we're on our way. At 9, I discreetly informed the caterer that they may pack away the leftovers. I did not cry. I just sat at one of the workstations sipping warm champagne from a plastic flute and looked at the empty lobby. Every sound boomed across the room. All I could think was that after everything I had done for them, they couldn't even bother showing up for one night. Then my phone vibrated. It was a photo from the family group chat. Marcus and my dad stood in front of a brand new barbecue grill laughing and holding beers. The caption said, "Housewarming success." I looked at it for a long time. There was no, "Sorry we couldn't make it." There was no "Congratulations, Adrian." There was nothing. Just a casual announcement that they had all decided without hesitation to attend Marcus's housewarming rather than my grand opening. I didn't respond. I could not. My stomach turned, but part of me wasn't surprised. I finished up the rest of the decorations, switched out the lights, and returned home. The next morning, I received a text from Helena Keller. "We need to discuss earnings. Your brother claims he deserves a haircut." I sat there staring at the computer, my coffee getting cold. What did my brother deserve a cut of? He had not invested a penny, lifted a finger, or even attended the launch. My company hadn't made a single dollar yet. Marcus suddenly became entitled to a portion of it. I did not respond right away. I just felt exhausted, not from the night before, but from years of being taken for granted. I could already picture how the conversation would unfold. Helena insists that family comes first. Robert claims that Marcus needs this more than you do. Marcus was presumably emailing me a list of reasons why his contribution, whatever it was, deserved a percentage. For the first time in a long time, I felt something within me hardened. That text was not simply a request. That was a warning shot. I had a choice. Roll over like I always did or try something new this time. I put down my phone, got myself another cup of coffee, and began to contemplate. And that's when I realized, possibly for the first time in my life, that I wasn't as helpless as they assumed. I did not respond to Helena's text that day or the following. Instead, I watched the group conversation fill up with more photographs of Marcus's housewarming and inside jokes I wasn't aware of. Each one poured gasoline to the calm burning in my chest. By the end of the week, Helena had sent another note. "Adriana, please answer your phone. This is vital." I did respond finally, and what I said next made her utterly silence. When I finally answered the phone, Helena went into her normal routine. "No, Hello. No. How are you? Just a short Adrian. We've been trying to reach you for days. I remained silent for a beat longer than normal, just enough for her to notice. What's going on? She asked as if I were acting abnormally. You're asking me about profits? I said slowly, carefully selecting each word. But none of you showed up for my company's launch. There was a long delay. I imagined her standing in her kitchen, palm on her hip, already upset by being challenged. Adrian. Mom finally began in that patient but condescending tone she used when I was a youngster. You know how important Marcus's housewarming was. Everyone was there. It wouldn't have been right to split up the family over one night. One night, I reiterated. My voice came out flatter than I had planned. This was not a dinner party. This was the official launch of my business, something I've been working on for years. She sighed as if I were the one being dramatic. You're overreacting. Marcus is just starting his life with Sophia Loren, and you'll have plenty of other events. Now, about the profits. I had a good laugh. A shrill, humorless sound caused her to go silent for a second. Profits? Helena? I haven't even finished onboarding my first clients yet. There are no profits. Well, Marcus was saying that since he inspired you to start the company, he should get some sort of founder's share or at least a family discount since he wants to use your services for his own projects. That completely stopped me. Inspired me? I inquired incredulously. Helena, I've been planning this since college. Marcus didn't even know what I was working on until last month. She continued chatting, entirely ignoring my remark. Look, your brother is trying to build his life. You're single. You don't have kids. You can afford to be generous. Think of this as helping the family. The family is in need. That line again. I told her I needed to go and hung up before she could say anything else. That was the moment I understood this wasn't going to go away. My parents did not regard my company as mine. They viewed it as the family's new resource. Marcus was first in line, holding a plate, ready to take whatever he wanted. Over the next few weeks, things only grew worse. Marcus messaged me personally one afternoon. Hey bro, I was thinking, can you hook me up with a partnership package? Like, I'll promote your company to my friends, and in return you give me a lifetime free account. Fair. I looked at the message with bewilderment. In his entire life, he had only promoted his own gatherings. When I didn't respond immediately, he sent another. Helena said, you'd probably say yes. Just let me know what I need to post. That's when I decided I wouldn't react at all. A day later, Helena called again. Adrienne, why are you ignoring your brother? He's trying to help you grow your business. I asked her calmly whether she knew what Marcus was asking for. Effectively, free labor. She brushed it off. It's just family. You're making such a big deal out of nothing. But the group chat told a different picture. Marcus emailed a snapshot of his new patio furniture with the message, thanks Helena and Robert for the loan. Another relative asked, what about Adrian? Didn't he just launch something? Marcus responded, yes, but he's been acting strangely about money lately. Helena joined in. He's stressed. He'll come around. They were conducting complete talks about me, my money, and my company without my presence right in front of me. Then came the kicker, an invitation to Marcus's networking barbecue. You should come, Helena exclaimed cheerfully when she called to follow up. Lots of people there could be good for your business. I inquired who would be there. Oh, just some of Marcus's friends, people from his gym, Sophia Loren's family. Bring some business cards. I nearly laughed. They had skipped my launch, but now I was supposed to show up at Marcus's party and beg his buddies for business. I did not go. And that night, they sent a group photo of the entire family gathered around the grill with the remark, so much fun. We missed you, Adrian. The phrase, we missed you, stung more than I imagined. Like, it was my fault for not following their narrative. The last straw arrived 3 weeks later. My accountant sent me an email informing me that someone using Helena's email address had inquired about adding a family partner to my company's banking account. They didn't have access, of course, but the mere fact that they tried made my stomach plummet. I dialed Helena immediately. Oh, that, she remarked, offended. I was just trying to make things easier for you. This way, Marcus could handle some of the finances and take the stress off your plate. I remained quiet for a long time. Helena, don't ever do that again, I eventually said. My voice sounded low. Steady. You don't touch my accounts. You don't ask about my accounts. This company is mine. She was choking up. You don't have to be so territorial. We're just looking out for you. But I didn't believe it any longer. I hung up and sat in my office for a while, staring out the window. The city below was bustling with people living their lives and making their own decisions. And here I was allowing my family to make me feel like a child. For the first time, I genuinely considered what it meant to set real boundaries. Not just saying no once, but making certain they couldn't steal from me again. The next day, Marcus texted me again. Bro, did you see the new patio heater I bought? You should come check it out. Also, when are we getting that family discount? Robert said. You're being stingy. My attitude changed. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop, signed into every single account bearing my name, joint streaming services, shared utilities, even the old family phone plan, and began building a list. Because if they thought they were entitled to what I had created, they were about to learn how wrong they were. And I wasn't about to warn them this time. 3 weeks have gone. I was busy onboarding my first real clients, working long hours at the office, drinking too much coffee, eating takeaway, and feeling proud of myself. For a period, I assumed the family drama would subside if I remained silent and concentrated on my work. Then came the weekend that changed everything. It was Saturday morning, and I had decided to sleep in for the first time in weeks. Around 8 a.m., my phone started buzzing nonstop. Helena called first, followed by Robert, Marcus, and Helena again. I groaned and rolled over, ignoring it. A minute later, a notification appeared on my company's internal dashboard. A flagged access attempt. Someone attempted to log in from an unfamiliar device. I sat up straight in bed. I opened my laptop to check the logs. Sure enough, there had been 4 failed login attempts from an IP address that seemed strangely close to my parents' house. Someone had been attempting to access my company account, and not just casually. They were guessing passwords. My stomach sank. I dialed Helena immediately. Oh, good. You're awake, she replied happily, as if it were a typical Saturday morning. We were just talking about how to get you some help. Marcus and I were thinking you're working too hard, and if we had access to some of the systems, we could process payments for you, maybe keep track of client invoices. You tried to log in? I said bluntly. Silence. You tried to get into my company account? I asked, my voice rising. Well, yes, but only because you've been so secretive lately, she responded defensively. We thought maybe you were overwhelmed. This way we could. You had no right, I retorted. None. You don't touch my company. You don't even ask before doing something like that. She sounded offended. Adrian, you're making it sound like we're criminals. We're your family. We just want to help. I threw out a quick bitter laugh and said, Help, Helena. You skip my launch. You gossip about me in the group chat. You demand money I don't have. And now you try to break into my accounts. That's not help. She sniffed, and her voice took on that biting edge I knew so well. You're being ungrateful. Robert and I raised you, supported you through school. And this is the thanks we get, locking us out. I pinched the bridge of my nose attempting to breathe. You didn't pay for my school, Helena. I did. You didn't support me when I was saving for this company. You barely even knew what I was doing until I signed the lease. That's not the point, she replied coldly. This family shares everything. You've been acting like you're better than us, hoarding your success. It's selfish. I did not trust myself to say anything else. I simply hung up. Marcus texted me 20 minutes later. Really, dude? Helena says you yelled at her. Chill. She was just trying to make sure you don't mess anything up. Also, I already told Sophia we'd get that family plan discount, so don't make me look bad. I put the phone down, shivering. That's when I knew it wasn't simply about the boundaries anymore. They truly believed that they were entitled to what I had accomplished. By Monday, it had intensified again. When I got to my office, I discovered an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a handwritten note from Robert Adrian. We've been patient with you, but your attitude lately is unacceptable. Helena and I have talked, and we think it's time you start giving back to the family in a real way. We propose a family stipend, 20% of your monthly revenue to be distributed fairly between your parents and your brother. Consider this a way of honoring where you came from. I sat in my office, grasping the letter so tightly that the paper crinkled. My father, the man who hadn't bothered to attend the most significant night of my career, was now formally asking a portion of my revenue rather than profits. Revenue comes before expenses and compensation. It was so ludicrous that I almost laughed. But then I realized they were serious. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every time I had gotten Marcus out of trouble. I once paid for his rent after he squandered his whole paycheck on a business venture. When I co-signed a loan for him to buy a car, he missed 4 payments, causing my credit score to plummet. Helena contacted me distraught after Marcus got into a fight at a bar and needed money for court bills. Every time I showed up, this was how they repaid me, by attempting to worm their way into my livelihood before it had ever begun to grow. The following weekend was the last nail in the coffin. I was out with a friend for lunch when I received notification that my company's workplace alarm had been triggered. My stomach lurched. When I returned to the building, I discovered my brother waiting outside the office door playing with the keypad. "What are you doing?" I yelled, my voice echoing through the hall. He jumped, looking guilty for a half second before putting on a smile. "Relax, Manuel. Helena said you wouldn't mind if I grabbed a few things. I told Sophia I'd show her around your office." "You tried to break in?" I asked, my tone icy. "It's not breaking in if it's family," he remarked, shrugging as if it were the most rational thing in the world. I only stared at him for a second. I did not know what to say. "You need to leave," I finally replied, each word calculated. He scoffed. "Wow, really? You think you're too good for us now?" I moved closer and lowered my voice. "If you ever try to get into this office again without my permission, I will call the police." His grin wavered. "You wouldn't try me." He exited, muttering something beneath his breath. When the door closed behind him, I latched it and remained there, my hands quivering. That was it. That was the line. They had gone from disrespect to flagrant violation. I didn't answer any calls or texts for the rest of the weekend. I sat at my desk going over every system I had, business accounts, personal accounts, security settings, and began tightening things down, realizing that this wasn't just about limits. This was wartime, and if they wanted to treat my firm like a personal ATM, they were about to find out what it meant when I closed the door permanently. I awoke on Monday feeling as if I'd been hit by a truck. My body was not sore. It was my chest, stomach, and head. Everything felt heaviest. I sat on the side of my bed for a long time, staring at my phone while it buzzed repeatedly. Helena called twice, then Robert and Marcus. Each one left voicemails that grew angrier by the hour. "Adrian," Helena's voice snapped on the latest one. "Your brother said you threatened to call the police on him. This is ridiculous. You need to apologize before this family falls apart completely." I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted it, stood up, and headed into the kitchen. I made coffee on autopilot and sat down at the table, staring at the steam curling from the mug. My family, although if dysfunctional, had been my safety net for many years. They were loud, entitled, and manipulating. Yet they remained my family. And since I was a child, I had been taught to prioritize their sentiments in order to maintain harmony. But now, maintaining the quiet was eating me alive. I barely noticed when tears streamed down my cheeks. Not loud, weeping tears, but silent, heated ones that obscured my vision until I had to put the mug down to avoid spilling it. I didn't cry frequently. I'd schooled myself not to. But that morning, I felt hollow, as if all of the energy I had put into creating this dream had been sapped by those who were supposed to celebrate it. I called in ill to the office that day. My assistant covered for me while I sat on the couch with my laptop, not working or watching TV, just staring. I opened the family group chat and scrolled all the way back, rereading months of texts. Every snarky joke is at my cost. Marcus was consistently complimented for performing the bare minimum. My parents consistently dismissed my accomplishments as insignificant. As I read, something began to shift. Initially, there was only harsh and stinging rage, but beyond the rage, there was a tremendous ache. I had worked hard to win their approval and make them proud, but it was never enough. By the end of the day, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to try again. The following few weeks were terrible. I began avoiding family gatherings totally. If Helena phoned, I let it go to voicemail. If Robert texted, I ignored it. I worked later hours, often sleeping in the office simply to avoid seeing them. But the silence did not make them disappear. Instead, they doubled down. Helena walked up to my apartment one afternoon, pounding on the door as if she owned it. When I opened it a crack, she jumped right in. "Adrian, this is childish." You can't keep cutting us out just because you're upset. Your brother is hurt. He was only trying to help. Trying to help by breaking into my office? I asked, my voice tired. You're exaggerating, she replied, waving her hand. He just wanted to see the space. You should be flattered. He cares enough to get involved. I glanced at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. It's just distance. I'm busy, I replied, closing the door before she could answer. I leaned against it, my heart hammering, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. The following weekend, I skipped a long-planned family dinner. Helena sent me 20 texts in a row. Trips. Your grandmother was asking about you to anger. You're embarrassing us by not showing up to veiled threats. If you keep this up, don't expect us to support you when things get tough. From guilt. I did not respond to any of them. However, the quiet was not without consequences. Work became in difficulty. I was exhausted all of the time. My mind was continually rehearsing conflicts that hadn't transpired yet. I've stopped sleeping through the night. I'd awaken at 4 a.m. I broke out in a cold sweat when I remembered Marcus standing at my office door, smirking as if everything was a game. I was impatient with my staff, short with friends, and clumsy with minor jobs. One night, I sat at the office until dawn, just running numbers, frightened that I'd overlook something vital and the entire business would fail. And my family would step in and say, "See, this is why you needed us." But beneath all of the anxiety and tiredness, something else began to form. Clarity. One Friday night, I sat in my office with a notepad and simply began writing. Not emails or job tasks, just a list. I put down every account with my name that my relatives could access. Every shared bill, streaming service, an old account that still had Marcus or my parents as secondary users. Then I listed all of the ways they may potentially interfere with my business. From attempting to access accounts to calling vendors to turning up unexpectedly. It wasn't simply a to-do list. It was a blueprint. Since I recognized that if I didn't take action now, this would never end, I spent the whole weekend acting on that list. I called my bank and requested more security measures. I enabled two-factor authentication on every platform. I transferred my personal savings to a new account with a different bank. I consulted with my attorney about securing the company documents so that no modifications could be made without my permission. Each step made me feel a bit lighter. By Sunday night, I reclined back in my chair, staring at the office ceiling, and felt a sensation I hadn't felt in months. Calm, not pleased, not triumphant, but tranquil, because for the first time, I was not simply reacting to what my family did. I was prepared, and deep down, I knew that was just the beginning. Whatever came next, I'd be ready. And this time, they wouldn't expect it. It's strange how much lighter the world feels once you stop begging for other people's acceptance. Something inside of me transformed after that weekend of lockdown. I stopped checking for texts from Helena and Robert, rehearsing arguments in my head and wondering what they were saying about me in the group chat. Instead, I began focusing on what I could control and create. The next Monday, I arrived at the office before daylight. The city was peaceful, still waking up, and for the first time in months, I was excited to be here. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, sat down with my notebook, and planned the following 4 months of corporate growth. Although my initial few clients were tiny, word of mouth spread quickly. One reference led to another, and I soon had meetings scheduled with larger players, contracts that might secure the company's finances for the entire year. And without the continual background noise of my family pushing on me, I was sharper and more focused. One by one, the transactions began to close. I recall the first significant client I secured, a mid-sized firm that had been looking for months. After our last pitch meeting, the CEO shook my hand and said, "Adrian, you clearly care about what you're building. That's why we're choosing you." I walked out of that meeting, grinning like a fool. When the contract arrived, I stayed late at the office to double-check the data. When I finally saw the revenue predictions, I leaned back in my chair and simply stared at the ceiling, a smile spreading across my face. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was an example of growth. Growth brought with it new opportunities. Over the next few weeks, I upgraded the office's technology, hired a part-time administrative assistant, and even hired a consultant to help streamline operations. Each innovation made the firm run more smoothly, giving me more time to focus on strategy. It felt great, even better, to watch something I'd worked on for years finally blossom. The finest part, however, was neither money nor success. It was confidence. I stopped feeling little when my phone vibrated with a message from Helena or Marcus. I stopped dreaded seeing them at the grocery store. In fact, I started ignoring them completely. Helena left me a lengthy voicemail filled with sighs and theatrical pauses. Adrian, this has gone on long enough. Your brother is hurt. Your father and I are hurt. We just want to sit down and figure out a way to work together. Family is supposed to share. I did not call her back. Instead, I listened to the message twice, calmly deleted it, and returned to examining a new contract worth more than my previous 4 clients combined. And then something interesting occurred. Marcus texted me again, this time with a question rather than demands. Hey bro, do you know anyone hiring? Things are kind of tight right now. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have ignored him. I could have gloated. Instead, I typed, no, sorry. Things are busy here. That was it. The power dynamic had shifted. I did not need to yell or dispute. I didn't have to explain myself. For the first time in my life, I had the option to just not participate. And the silence drove them mad. The texts became more frequent. Marcus asked if I might lend him money to cover the rent. Helena asked if I could pay for a family trip they had already planned because they were a little short right now. Robert sent me a note stating he'd heard about my new clients and felt it was only fair to share some of the success. I did not respond to any of it. Instead, I continued to grow. Within a few months, my revenue had doubled. I relocated the company to a somewhat larger location with more natural light and space for expansion. I purchased new furnishings, upgraded our software, and even hired a junior project manager to help alleviate some of my workload. For the first time, I felt like a legitimate CEO. And that's when I started thinking about the following step. Not only surviving and thriving, but exploiting my position to permanently safeguard myself. I established a separate holding company for my assets, moved my intellectual property into it, and structured things so that if anyone ever attempted to intervene legally, they'd have to go through multiple layers to determine what I even owned. I also revised my will, which most people my age don't even consider, to ensure that everything was locked down and out of reach of anyone who would try to claim a piece of it for the good of the family. Each step made me feel stronger, calmer, and more in charge. But the irony was that the more I backed away, the louder my family became. Helena began sending guilt-laden emails about missing her kid. Marcus posted cryptic rants on social media about self-centered people who forget their roots. Robert left messages indicating that he needed to discuss the future of the family. Marcus even showed up outside my office again, but this time he was unable to enter. I'd improved the security system to demand access cards and cameras. I watched him on the feed, pacing, knocking once or twice, and then departing. When I received an alert on my phone indicating the system had recorded footage, I stored it just in case. Because as pleased as I was of how far I'd come, I knew one thing for certain. They weren't finished. They'd try again. And when they did, I was not going to sit there and accept it. I was going to be prepared, not only to safeguard everything I had achieved, but also to make it clear that they could no longer treat me this way. And for the first time, I felt a peculiar sense of anticipation since I was no longer just surviving their onslaught. I was waiting for them to make their next move before I could finally make mine. By spring, my company was in the finest shape it had ever been. I had a small but devoted crew, recurring contracts with multiple mid-sized organizations, and adequate cash flow to cover payroll. The business no longer appeared fragile. It felt stable, and that steadiness gave me the mental space to consider the big picture. I wasn't just establishing a corporation anymore. I was making a shield. One Friday afternoon, I was going over paperwork with my attorney, signing off on some final protections for the holding company when he casually asked, "You mentioned family disputes last time we met. Do you still want to include a clause prohibiting them from ever having financial power over the business?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. He nodded, making a notation in the document. "Good call. You'd be surprised how many disputes we see when a business starts doing well. Families can be complicated." I nearly laughed. Complicated was an understatement. Following the meeting, I decided to go for a long walk through the city. The weather was pleasant, and for the first time in a while, I allowed myself to slow down and ponder. That's when I realized something unusual. I hadn't heard from my folks in almost 3 weeks. No texts, no voicemails, and no unexpected visitors. At first, I assumed they'd finally given up. But then I received a call from a common acquaintance, a family friend who ran a small accounting firm. Adrian, I just thought you should know, he added, his voice low. Your brother came by my office last week asking questions about how to set up a business partnership, and he mentioned your company by name. I paused in my tracks. What did he say exactly? He said you'd probably make him a partner soon, but he wanted to get ahead of the paperwork, so it wouldn't take too long. Sounded pretty confident about it. I thanked him for the heads up, hung up, and stood on the pavement for a minute, allowing the wrath to wash over me. Marcus was preparing something, and knowing my brother, it wasn't going to be minor. That weekend, I finally reopened the group chat, not to respond, but to observe. Sure enough, there it was. Helena responded, "We're thinking of having a family meeting next weekend to discuss some exciting opportunities." Marcus responded, "Yeah, can't wait to share what I've been working on." Robert's response, "Adrian, you should really be there. This could be big for all of us." I put down the phone and felt something move within me. For months, I had been on the defensive, blocking them, locking things down, and attempting to prevent them from interfering. But suddenly, I had leverage because the truth was that my company was no longer a vulnerable startup. It was profitable and secure. And thanks to the restructure, I was the only person with legal ability to make decisions about it. Even if Marcus walked into a lawyer's office tomorrow and said he was entitled to a share, there was nothing they could do. The best part is that they were unaware of this. That night, I got down at my desk with a legal pad and began writing. This time, instead of just taking notes, make plans. I identified every point of communication I still had with my family, every account they might use, and every small connection they had to my life. Then I described methods for severing each one gradually, strategically, and without warning. I also began to see my company differently, not just as a source of income, but also as a fortress. What would it take to make it entirely invulnerable? I upgraded the security system again, this time adding biometric access. I had my lawyer prepare a formal document prohibiting any family members from ever receiving shares or voting rights. I even spoke with a public relations representative about what would happen if someone attempted to draw my company into a public fight and how we could get ahead of the narrative. Piece by piece, I was creating an environment in which my family could not reach me. And then something unexpected happened, giving me the final piece of leverage I didn't realize I needed. One of my new clients was a real estate developer who also happened to be negotiating a home improvement deal with my brother. During a discussion, the developer casually mentioned Marcus's name and inquired whether we were related. I kept my expression neutral and nodded. "Funny guy," the developer replied, chuckling. "He's trying to get us to front him some money for the job before he delivers. Said he's good for it because his family business is doing so well." My eyebrows rose. Family business. Yeah. He said his brother owns a company that could back him if needed. I did not correct him. I just smiled faintly and made a mental note since I now had something my brother didn't believe I possessed. Influence. Quiet, unobtrusive impact. The kind that didn't include yelling or fighting. Just a well-placed remark here and there to ensure the truth was revealed when it counted. By the time the family gathering came, I was prepared, not only emotionally, but strategically. I have all of the papers to prove my exclusive ownership. I had backups of every security log that revealed their attempted meddling. I had financial statistics that indicated how much work I had done to help this company succeed. Most importantly, I had the calm confidence that whatever they did next, I could manage it. The night before the meeting, I sat in my office long after everyone else had gone home, admiring the space I had created from scratch. The polished concrete flooring, the gentle hum of the server rack in the corner, and the dim glow of the city lights outside. This was mine, and they were going to learn that lesson in some way tomorrow. I sat back in my chair, a gradual smile creeping across my lips, because the preparation was complete. All that remained was for me to make my move after they had made theirs. The family meeting was set for Sunday afternoon at my parents' place, where I had spent numerous holidays sitting at the kids' table while Marcus held court as the focus of attention. This time, I didn't feel like a youngster entering enemy land. I arrived on time in a suit, cool and composed. Helena raised her eyebrows as she opened the door. "Well, don't you look formal?" she asked, half amused and half concerned. "This is a business meeting," I replied evenly as I stepped inside. Marcus was already at the dinner table, lying back in a chair with a smug expression. Robert sat at the head of the table, solemn as if presiding over an official meeting. "Glad you could make it," Robert responded. "Let's sit down and talk like adults." I took a seat across from Marcus, who quickly began his pitch. "So here's the deal," he explained, spreading out a few papers as if this were his boardroom. "I've got a line on a great project, but I need some capital to get it going. Once it takes off, it'll benefit the whole family. Since your company is doing well, we figured you could front the investment, just a small percentage of your revenue each month, and we'll consider you an official partner." He leaned back, evidently anticipating applause. Helena nodded in approval. "See, this is what we meant about working together. Everyone contributes. Everyone wins." I listened for a few more minutes, hands folded on the table. When they finally came to a halt, waiting for my approval, I slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" Robert inquired. "Documentation," I explained quietly. "My company's operating agreement, ownership records, financials, everything showing that I am the sole founder, shareholder, and decision maker. And before you ask, no, there will be no partnership, no revenue sharing, no family stipend. This company is mine legally and permanently." Marcus frowned. "Whoa, what's with the lawyer talk? We're family. You don't have to make it so official." "Yes," I replied evenly. "I do because the last time we had a casual understanding, someone tried to access my accounts without permission. Someone tried to get into my office, and someone sent me a letter demanding 20% of my revenue as if it was their right." Helena bristled. "That was your father's idea." "I have it in writing," I said, my voice forceful yet calm. "And if anything like that happens again, I won't hesitate to involve law enforcement." The room became silent. For a long time, I only heard the faint ticking of the wall clock. "You wouldn't," Robert finally said, his voice low. "I would," I answered simply. "I have security footage, logs, emails, and a lawyer who's fully briefed. This isn't a threat. It's a boundary. You don't cross it again." Marcus snorted, attempting to play it off. "You think you're so big now, huh? Just because you're making money." I smiled, not harshly, but calmly. "No, I think I finally learned that I don't owe you my success, and I definitely don't owe you access to it." Before they could answer, I dug into my suitcase and pulled out a stack of papers, including termination notices for every joint account and bills still bearing my name. "These," I commented as I set them down, "are the last ties between my finances and this family. Phone plan, streaming accounts, insurance policies, all canceled or transferred, effective immediately." Helena's mouth dropped open. "You can't just I can," I said, and I did. Marcus's arrogant grin had vanished, replaced by a flush of wrath. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like some kind of dictator. All we wanted was a little help." "You wanted control," I replied, catching his gaze. "And you wanted it without doing any of the work. That ends today." For the first time in years, I did not feel on the defensive. I felt steady. I stood, gathering my folder and placing it back in my bag. "This conversation is over," I stated gently. "If you'd like to have a relationship with me, it will be on respectful terms. Otherwise, consider this the last time we'll be meeting like this." I went out of the house without looking back. But the revenge was not complete. Not yet. Over the next 3 weeks, I ensured that the message was remembered. Marcus tried to name drop my company to a potential client, but they called me first to finalize the agreement. I calmly informed them that there was no collaboration and never will be. The agreement fell through. Helena attempted to guilt trip me by emailing images of family events with captions like, "We miss you," but I did not respond. When she finally called to demand an explanation, I responded calmly. "I'm busy running a company. You know, the one you all ignored, and I don't have time for manipulation." Word spread quickly. Family friends began to reach out, not to chastise me, but to gently express their understanding. Some even told me they were proud of me for advocating for myself, which I had never heard from my own parents. And the best part, the more they pressed, the calmer I became. I didn't yell, quarrel, or send too emotional texts. I just imposed my boundaries quietly and consistently every time. It eventually began to sink in. Calls became less frequent. The messages became shorter. The demands ceased entirely as they realized that the old Adrian, the one who would succumb to remorse and show up with his wallet open simply to keep the peace, had vanished. and in his stead was someone they could no longer manage. It did not happen overnight. For a few weeks, the silence was nearly unsettling. No texts, no calls, and no unexpected knocks on my office door. I hoped they'd finally understood the message, but then the consequences hit. One Friday morning, I was going over quarterly predictions when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, one of Marcus's contractors. "Sorry for bothering you," the man added, "but your brother told us you were his financial backer. We just wanted to confirm before moving forward with materials." I felt calm, purposeful wrath come over me, and I answered, "No," evenly. "My company does not back any of Marcus's ventures. Please make sure you get everything in writing from him before you start work." The man thanked me, sounding shocked yet relieved. It was evident that he had been burnt before. Marcus called me later that day, enraged. "You just cost me a contract," he said the moment I responded. "No, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice level. "You cost yourself a contract by lying about my company's involvement." "You're such a jerk," he exclaimed. "Do you know how hard it is out here? You could have just said yes and helped me out." "I don't reward dishonesty," I remarked simply before hanging up. That marked the beginning of the breakdown. Within a month, I learned from a mutual acquaintance that Marcus had lost 3 additional clients. Word had spread that he was untrustworthy, that he promised financial backing that he did not actually have. Meanwhile, my firm continued to grow. I signed 3 large new contracts and hired an additional team member. We moved to a larger office with a full floor to ourselves. Then came the family cookout, the first one I'd been invited to in months. Helena called me directly. "Adrian," Helena replied, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "We'd really like you to come. Things have been tense. Your father and I want to talk." I pondered saying no. But something inside me knew this was the time. When I arrived, the mood was tight. Marcus sat at the picnic table, unhappy and picking at his plate. Robert seemed exhausted. Helena seems to have gone over a speech beforehand. "Adrian," she said, "we just want to put all this behind us. Family is more important than money." I almost laughed, but I kept my face cool. "Funny," you replied, "because money was the only thing you wanted from me for months." Helena flinched. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair," I replied gently. "You skipped the most important night of my life to go to a housewarming. You tried to get into my accounts. You demanded a percentage of my revenue before I'd even broken even. And when I said no, you tried to guilt me into giving you access anyway." Robert sighed. "We made mistakes, but surely you can forgive." "I can't," I replied, cutting him off. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean letting you keep taking." Marcus finally spoke up, his tone stern. "You think you're better than us now, just because you have money." I turned to him, calm as always. "No, Marcus. I think I've stopped letting you use me as your backup plan, and you don't like it." He did not answer. I stood there, taking my time and letting the silence extend. "Here's the truth," I stated, gazing at each of them. "I built this company from nothing. I sacrificed years of my life for it, and you didn't just fail to support me. You actively tried to take from me. That ends now. We will not be doing business together. We will not be sharing accounts. If you want a relationship with me, it will be as family, not as shareholders." I began going toward the gate, but hesitated and turned back one final time. "And if you ever try to cross that line again to get into my accounts, my office, or my business, I will treat you the same way I'd treat any other trespasser." Their expressions were a mix of disbelief and rage, but nobody said anything. I fled without looking back. Driving home, I experienced something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the frail, silent kind I used to rely on, but something robust. That night, I sat in my new office and looked out at the downtown skyline. My team had left hours ago. The area was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the servers. I reflected on all the times I had bent over backwards for my family, sacrificing my own aspirations to keep them happy. And I smiled, for they had finally understood. The next morning, I received a text from Helena. "We'll respect your wishes. We just hope someday you'll come back to the family." I didn't respond. Instead, I took a photo of the office, the polished floors, the tidy workstations, and the name of my company glowing on the wall, and forwarded it to the group chat with the following message. "You had your chance to be part of this. That chance is gone. And then I permanently muted the chat. I leaned back in my chair, shut my laptop, and took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt as if I had created a life and future of my own.